This is the CBS Evening News with Harry Reisner substituting for Walter Cronkite, and Eric Severide in Washington, Peter Kalischer in Prague, Martin Agronsky in New York, David Culhane in the Gulf of Tonkin, George Herman in Washington, and Morley Safer in London.
Good evening. Vice President Humphrey went to work today to try to win the presidency. Democratic nominees traditionally open their campaigns in Detroit's Cadillac Square. Humphrey started his in a New York parade. CBS News correspondent Martin Agronsky was there.
Vice President Hubert Humphrey led 100,000 Labor Day paraders up Fifth Avenue today with this prediction: I'm going to walk right up this avenue and into the White House. Striding shoulder to shoulder with AFL-CIO leader George Meany for 25 blocks, Humphrey managed a constant smile unaffected either by the sparse turnout along most of the way or the occasional heckling by small scattered groups of anti-war demonstrators and Nixon supporters. There was only one arrest. Police authorities described the security measures as being of presidential proportions. Some police who mingled in the crowd posed as newsmen. I tried unsuccessfully to interview these two policemen who carried identity cards reading News Association, which is non-existent.
That an interview would be no good for you? Huh? Well, I mean, you understand why I'm asking. We told you now.
Happiness was Hubert Humphrey when pretty Chinese girls handed him fortune cookies carrying this message: wise man know that a vote for Humphrey is vote for a better life. The parade hit was a limbo dance performed for the vice president. The Vice President returns tonight to his home in Waverly to spend a week planning campaign strategy. He'll be joined there on Wednesday by his running mate, Senator Muskie. And his formal campaign will begin in Philadelphia a week from today. Martin Agronsky, CBS News, the Vice President Hubert Humphrey in New York.
Richard Nixon's campaign headquarters today rejected Humphrey's plan for a bipartisan declaration supporting the Paris talks on Vietnam. A bit of old-style partisan hijinks, the Nixon camp said. An aide added that Nixon already has made his position clear, that he would do or say nothing in the campaign that would harm the position of U.S. negotiators. In a television interview today, Humphrey proposed that a blue ribbon committee be created to look into the role of everyone connected with the disorders during the Democratic Convention: the demonstrators, the police, and newsmen. Humphrey said he thought the police overreacted in some cases. He said he's sure Chicago's mayor, Richard Daley, doesn't condone beatings, and neither, Humphrey added, does he. Mayor Daley has already been urged to consider an impartial outside investigation of police treatment of newsmen in Chicago. Executives of the 3 television networks, 5 newspapers, and 2 news magazines said the obvious purpose of this treatment was to prevent reporting of the way police handle demonstrators. News, they said, must not be dealt with by clubbing and intimidation. George Wallace said today he's in an excellent position to win the presidency on the American independent ticket because of what he termed the mess in Chicago and the mess both national parties have gotten us into. Wallace, who spoke at a stock car race in Darlington, South Carolina, also said he's undecided about holding a national convention. First, he said, it seems you've got to make reservations for the U.S. Army.
You've had your supper and coffee. The horses are settling down. You settle back. You start to think about Saturday night in town. You watch the sun slide down the sky till it's just a big red ball. And if you sit real still and listen, you can almost hear the evening fall. the flavor is. Come to Marlboro Country.
Officials in Czechoslovakia said today that they are hopeful that Soviet bloc occupation forces will begin pulling out of the country within the next few days. But they warned that complete withdrawal will depend on how well public order is kept and how effectively Czechoslovak leaders carry out the concessions made to the Russians in the recent Moscow summit meeting. It's estimated there are more than 600,000 Soviet and other Warsaw Pact troops in Czechoslovakia. A wire service dispatch out of Prague today described Russian soldiers there as sad, perplexed, and lonesome as a result of an unofficial segregation policy practiced by the Czechs. This evening, in a film report from CBS News correspondent Peter Kalisher, we got a look at some of those soldiers and at part of the Czechoslovak exodus set off by their presence.
In a Prague park, a Russian USO company presents a song and dance program mostly for the benefit of the Russians in Prague. There are about 10 Czechoslovaks in this audience. The patter is entirely for a Russian audience. It's in Russian. And if there were many Czechs here, they wouldn't understand it anyway. There's Czech music as well, but if it were meant to lure a local audience, it failed. This is Bahnhof Station in Prague, and about to leave is the 240 for Vienna with about 200 people, 200 Czechs, who perhaps are saying goodbye to their country for a long time to come. They are refugees. There is more rumor than fact, so far, of secret arrests by Russian security. But a Pravda story and another in the Russian propaganda paper circulated here speaks of the necessary liquidation of 40,000 counter-revolutionaries. And the most obvious candidates are the writers, the technicians, the educated, those who identify with liberal reforms. And they are getting out while the getting is good. When do you expect to return?
I don't know, at about 2 or 3 years.
Do you think things will be better or worse when you come back?
It's a very hard question. I think it'd be worse than better.
You think you're going to come back in a week's time?
Yes, I hope so. I think so. No, I hope so. I think so.
Do you think things will be better in a week?
No. I know. I don't know. I don't know. I think not.
But you're coming back anyway?
Yes, I come back. I come back. I must come back.
Why?
I have my mother here, my old mother.
Do you intend returning to Czechoslovakia?
So I shall see the situation outside, and I can follow the situation inside, yes, and then I shall see.
In some cases, entire families are leaving together. Others must leave alone to arrange matters in advance. And who knows when and where they will rejoin each other. This is not the last train to Vienna. There will be another tomorrow. Peter Kalisher, CBS News, Prague.
Leaders of the American Communist Party met in New York this weekend to try to mend a split over whether the Soviets were right or wrong in occupying Czechoslovakia. This unity meeting was not a big success. The leaders today voted by a small majority, some say by 1 vote, to censure U.S. party officials who did not follow the hardliners of Moscow.
You people who want hours of relief from minor pains of arthritis and muscular aches, how many pain relievers do you know of that give you a second dose of pain relief before the first wears off? Measurin does, the first pain reliever with a built-in second dose. Measurin contains a double dose of aspirin in timed release form, so you take it just once every 8 hours instead of every 4. Convenient timed release Measurin with a built-in second dose for a long-lasting pain relief.
When you have
have acid indigestion. Every second counts. So count on instant-acting Phillips tablets. Phillips tablets go to work in seconds. With one of the fastest stomach settlers ever discovered, each small Phillips tablet neutralizes more excess stomach acid than the leading antacid tablet that comes in a roll. So for fast relief from acid-upset stomach, when every second counts, count on instant-acting Phillips tablets.
In Vietnam, American B-52 bombers carried out 11 raids against suspected enemy bases in the jungles around Saigon. There was no immediate word of results. American officials said the airstrikes were part of an Allied effort to prevent another Viet Cong attack on Saigon. Early today, the Viet Cong managed to fire 31 rockets into Da Nang, South Vietnam's second largest city, killing 27 persons and wounding 46. This evening we have a Vietnam film report, this one dealing with an important aspect of the air war against North Vietnam. CBS News correspondent David Culhane has the story aboard a U.S. vessel in the Gulf of Tonkin.
No other ship ventures so far north in the Gulf of Tonkin. We're only 40 miles from Haiphong, just a few minutes flying time for MiG fighters. The 400 men aboard have a lonely and dangerous mission: to lie in close to the shore and keep track by radar of every aircraft that moves over North Vietnam. This ship is one of the most sophisticated products of modern warfare. This is the Combat Information Center. The 45 men who work here call it the Land of Eternal Darkness, because the lights must be kept low to facilitate the reading of the radar scopes. Called the Navy Tactical Data System, the command and control operation assigns symbols for each aircraft. Captain, I understand that you're tracking some MiGs right now.
Yes, we are. As a matter of fact, we have 3 on our radar scopes at this time. We've had MiG activity all morning long.
I presume that the enemy knows how important this system is. Why do you think they haven't made more efforts to try and put a stop to what's going on out here?
As you've seen, we do have the MiGs on our scope at this time, and if they decide to come our way, we're ready for them. We have our combat air patrol fighters airborne. We're controlling them. We can vector them over to intercept the MiGs if they decide to cross over into our area, and if for some reason or other we're unable to take them with our combat air patrol, we're ready with our missiles.
This intake section can track more than 150 supersonic jets at any given time. Position, altitude, course, and speed for every aircraft in the area. And for American planes, even the number and type of weapons aboard and how much fuel each plane has left. When these Navy planes take off from one of the 3 carriers in the Gulf of Tonkin, there are 3 separate ships that have the computer tracking system to follow them. The computer keeps going 24 hours a day, giving position, speed, and course, identifying planes as air-friendly or air-hostile. But someday, perhaps that designation, air-hostile, will be out of date. Then ships like this, with radar and computers, could begin to help unsnarl civilian air traffic. David Culhane, CBS News, in the Gulf of Tonkin.
A group of American Roman Catholic psychologists today questioned the scientific basis for the Vatican's continued ban on artificial birth control methods, reaffirmed by Pope Paul 5 weeks ago. But in Rome, church officials said all Catholics must obey the ruling no matter what they think of it. The issue has widened the division between church liberals and conservatives and led to a demonstration today in Washington. George Herman reports.
At a Labor Day Mass this morning, Patrick Cardinal O'Boyle found pickets outside the Shrine of the Sacred Heart. The Cardinal has aroused Catholic liberals by removing an assistant parish priest, Father Joseph O'Donoghue. He's one of 52 priests who signed a document calling birth control still a matter for individual conscience. The Washington Lay Association considers this the first skirmish of a new round of debate inside the church. President James Gibbons explains.
Well, the issue is freedom of conscience within the institutional church, and as you know, Cardinal O'Boyle has suspended 1 priest already and has threatened suspension with 50 other priests for their speaking out on the birth control issue. And we disagree with this way of suppressing the freedom of conscience within the church, and we want to let Cardinal O'Boyle know that we disagree with it and that we think the way to deal with these issues is through dialogue within the church and respecting people's freedom of conscience.
After Mass, the picketing ended. The cardinal met briefly with dissident priests, reaching no agreement, and left the church declining comment.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I never thought I was so unpopular. Goodbye.
The picketing was peaceful. The cardinal was calm. He has scheduled a news conference for tomorrow to discuss the whole affair, and the Association of Washington Priests also intends to air its opposing views. And Washington's latest hierarchical battle seems certain to escalate. George Herman, CBS News at the Shrine of the Sacred Heart in Washington, D.C.
$6,000, $7,000, $8,000, maybe more. That's what it takes to keep up with the competition. That's what college costs. What's the best kind of life insurance to have? A John Hancock man won't have any snap answers. We have so many different plans and options, he'll sit down with you and figure out exactly what you do need. Maybe it's a plan that keeps you covered even if you borrow on it for college expenses. Or maybe it's our new plan that lets you buy a modest amount of insurance now, but guarantees that you can get more later, regardless of your health. If anybody in this life insurance business can design the right plan for you, it's probably us.
John Hancock, huh?
The official death toll from earthquakes and aftershocks in northeastern Iran passed 12,000 today, with authorities saying the final figure may reach 20,000. At least 50,000 persons were injured and 100,000 made homeless. The International Red Cross says it's expanding an airlift of food and supplies to Biafra in spite of the risk of being fired on by Nigerian ground forces. The unarmed relief planes will fly day and night and originate from a Spanish island offshore where Nigerian officials have been invited to inspect the cargo as it is loaded. Around any American holiday, there are always warnings about drinking and driving. But in Britain, the warnings are far more frequent and being taken seriously, the result of a tough law which went into effect earlier this year. Morley Safer reports from London.
These are the busiest roads in the world. Not because there are that many motor cars in Britain, it's just that there are so few roads. So motoring here is an exercise that requires a great deal of discipline, restraint, and caution. 6 months ago, the British Ministry of Transport, alarmed by a skyrocketing accident graph, imposed a law, at first desperately unpopular, but now it seems to have proven itself. It gives the police the right to breath test motorists for the alcohol level of their blood. Anything over 0.08% means automatic disqualification from driving, a fine, and possibly even a prison sentence. Scotland Yard arranged the following mock-up of the breath test for CBS News to give some idea of how the law is applied. Police only give the breath test if a car has been in an accident or if it's been driven erratically.
If you object to this, sir, I must point out that you are liable to fine, imprisonment and disqualification from driving. Have you any objection? No, well, may I come in the car with you? Thank you very much. Now, what I want you to do with this is when I give it to you, I want you to take a deep breath.
Yeah?
Then I want you to blow it up for at least 10 seconds to fill the bag right up. Okay? Good. Now take a deep breath and blow straight down there. Hold the bottom because you'll burn your fingers. Down the bottom there. That's it. Blow. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, as you can see, it's turned the crystals just over the line there. Yeah. You see it's gone green
you
over
mean
there.
This,
you see that little yellow line there? It's gone right over the line. Well, Now I must ask you to accompany me to Albany Police Station, Albany Street Police Station.
Yeah. What you are seeing, we repeat, is not an actual arrest, but a demonstration prepared by Scotland Yard. Yet it typifies what has happened to 28,000 motorists in 6 months. Of these, 12,500 have lost their licenses. But the law is not applied lightly. The suspect is given a second breath test 20 minutes after the first. If he fails that, there's still another test to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
As this breath test has proved positive, I must now ask you for a specimen of blood or urine for analysis, and I must warn you that failure to provide a specimen for analysis would render you liable to imprisonment, a fine, and disqualification.
Stephen Swingler, the Minister of State at the Ministry of Transport, is one of the authors of the legislation.
Since the breathalyzer came into force, we have had a reduction of 20% in fatal accidents and 14% in serious accidents. Now, we haven't had such a turning point for 30 years. As I say, it's coincided with the introduction of this, and I'm sure that pretty well everybody in the population here agrees that the breath test has made a substantial contribution to this welcome drop in accidents.
There is a tradition of drinking and driving in Britain. Alcohol has little stigma attached to it. Neighborhood or country public houses are places where whole families gather on weekend mornings and evenings. It was this very kind of driver which the ministry was trying to restrain, and apparently with great success.
Well, I feel that I need a car very badly for my business. I'd be very lost without one, and so I'm very careful. And I just don't think the risk is worth taking of drinking and driving to anywhere near what might be the limit.
Are you drinking less if you're going to drive? Do you drink less?
Oh, I think so, yes. Especially at parties and so on Saturday night. I'll make a conscious effort to drink less, definitely, yes.
So I think it's hit the women more than it's hit the men, because if our experiences are anything to go by, the men will just go out drinking just the same, and it's the women that have to do the driving, you see. So it's the women, really, that are suffering, I think, because having an evening out, you're sitting there with a lemonade all the evening, knowing that you've got to drive home, where the man can, just carry on in the normal way.
This apparatus in itself isn't going to make a more cautious driver of you. All it does is remind you to stop well before you feel you've had enough. And it might even save your life. Morley Say for CBS News, London.
When your eyes feel tired and sore, they usually look red, too. If you use plain eye drops or an eye wash, they feel better. But they still look red and tired and sore, unless you use Visine. Visine soothes your eyes. And because of tetrahydrozoline, which only Visine has, it gets the red out, too. It works in 60 seconds. Visine, the modern eye drop that gets the red out.
We're at the world-famous high karate assembly line, where skilled craftsmen are turning popular high karate aftershave into new high karate Oriental Lime. All the awesome power of regular high karate, with a fresh lime scent added, plus indispensable instructions on self-defense. New high karate Oriental Lime, aftershave and cologne. High karate. Be careful how you use it.
National correspondent Eric Severide is back in Washington from the Battle of Chicago, and he has some thoughts tonight on how a nominee and a nation react to demonstrations in the streets.
Washington may be the political headquarters of the nation and the Western world, but on this Labor Day it exudes the motionless calm of a backwoods village. The quiet is rather shattering to the nerves of all those returned from Chicago. They feel like bruised soldiers stumbling from a prolonged battle in which nobody won and everybody lost, in which there were no heroes, nor even any leaders who retained their dignity, save possibly Senators Muskie and McGovern. The Chicago street demonstrations and the handling and mishandling thereof have become the litmus test for politicians on the issue of free expression versus law and order. Senator McCarthy has gone down the line with the demonstrators with little concession to the evidence that the hardcore organizers in the streets were determined to break up the convention if they could. Nominee Humphrey has gone down the line with Mayor Daley and his police with little concession to the copious eyewitness evidence that many police also made completely unprovoked assaults on individuals and groups. Mr. Humphrey has apparently made a decision. To let Richard Nixon take over the law and order issue would be to lose this election to the Republicans. One mountainous fact has to be faced. In spite of the plain evidence of lawlessness on the part of many police as well as many demonstrators, the majority reaction of ordinary citizens in the country at large as well as in Chicago has moved to the side of the police. This has to mean that the large silent center of the electorate has reached the limits of its patience with those who take politics to the streets. What Humphrey now calls the strident, self-righteous militants have, it now seems certain, called up a reaction, a backlash that will continue no matter which party takes national office after November. This is what wiser heads in basic sympathy with the protesters have tried to warn them would happen. But it is what the minority, hardcore communists and anarchists among them want to happen, to prove their hypothesis that America is essentially an oppressive society. Their psyches can exist on no other spiritual food. Harry?
A note from our album. Today is the 5th anniversary of the first half-hour daily news show in network television. This broadcast became that length on September 2nd, 1963. Both Kennedys were alive then. President John appeared in an interview on that first broadcast saying that the war in South Vietnam was theirs to win or lose. Hubert Humphrey was Democratic whip in the Senate. Richard Nixon was in semi-political retirement. Eugene McCarthy's high point in national publicity had been the nominating speech for Adlai Stevenson in 1960. The word hippie hadn't been invented. Pot, to most people, was something you put a chicken in, and fascist pig was something Europeans used to call each other. But there was enough news to take the step to go to a half hour every night. As a matter of fact, we thought we had plenty of news. It's a measure of how fast the world accelerates that after only 5 years, the troubled autumn of 1963 now has a nostalgic, peaceful sound. That's the news. This is Harry Reasoner for Walter Cronkite. Good night.
Stop thinking that way, Chris. We already figured it out. If we're going to the mountains, we don't have the cash to go any farther. Chris, we just don't have the cash to go to so many places.
That problem's now solved, because you don't have to choose anymore. American Oil's new revolving credit plan lets you pay in pieces. Charge even big items like hotel and motel bills, extra meals, car rentals, and take up to a year to pay. So don't let lack of cash hold you back. See your American Oil dealer about getting a modern credit card from American Oil. Then, think about where you'd like to go this year. You expect more from American, and you get it.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Harry Reasoner, substituting for Walter Cronkite.